Hi and welcome to the Andy Gorman Golf One Putt podcast. I'm here with my wingman Gareth Shaw. There's love in the air because we've had Valentine's weekend and we've got some golf to be talking about. It's an iconic venue. We talked about it briefly last week, but Pebble Beach did not disappoint. Interesting what happened on and off the golf course, greens, and we've got some interesting information coming your way with regards to a brand new testing program with a brand new piece of equipment, Robo Putt. See you in the moment. Morning, Gareth.
Morning, Andy. How are you?
I'm very well, thanks. Very well. Have you enjoyed the weekend's entertainment?
Yeah, again, it's just weird on having one tournament on. You get used to the luxury of having two tournaments going.
I know, but given the fact that we've got a bit of nerve going on over the weekend as well, we couldn't have too much golf getting in the way, could we? So it's a bit of a late Valentine's, welcome. But it's yeah.
Did you cook? Did you cook, Andy?
Listen, if you're going to get a quality meal in this house, you don't ask Andy to do it. So I provided liquid entertainment, if you know what I mean, given the fact that I don't drink. But yes, Mrs. G had a couple of very nice bottles, although she only opened one and sipped a little bit from it. It was just a quiet day. Obviously, lockdown, what do you do? We would have gone out for a meal ordinarily. We'd have done what most couples would think about doing, I suppose, which is obviously going out for something to eat and spending time together. We spent some time together, quite a bit of time together actually. It was really nice, it was just quiet and the opportunity for us to appreciate each other, which was lovely. So
did you enjoy Pebble Beach?
I did. I haven't seen a huge amount of it over the weekend. I picked some highlights up. The finish was obviously, well, one thing I will say is that we saw some spectacular and we saw some even more spectacular. We saw some spectacular shots. I mean, hole outs from Spieth, and I will say that I think he's back, and I don't think it's going to be very long before he gets past the point of where he is now, which is 3 solid rounds and getting through the last round to create the win. I wouldn't say he's got exercising a gremlins to do, but he's got to get to figure out, there's an art to learning to win, and he learned to win early. And I think, we talked about this last week. I picked up on a commentary from somewhere else, which was said that, I don't think he realised how good he was, but also how he did it. And he's got to discover that again. And, to think that by the time, while I was watching it, he stood on the 17th tee, needing to finish birdie eagle to tie what was clubhouse lead. And of course, Daniel Berger hadn't made eagle at 18 at that point, which is pretty spectacular. Because, you've still got to do it. It is a par 5, but you still got to do it. And it doesn't shed many eagles. It will shed 1 or 2, but it doesn't shed many. But yeah, I think ultimately, we can safely say that, Spieth is back and he's doing his thing. It's good to see because he's a class act. And he comes across as a nice guy. Look, when you hit a bunch of bad shots and you're not used to doing it, you can appear to be a little petulant, a bit spoiled, it can upset a few folk. But when you're used to doing it, right, and you hit a few bad shots, it isn't petulance, it's the anxiety of, well, that's just a normal thing for me to do. And like I say, it is not then petulance. So, I feel for anybody who gets in a position like that and can't make it happen. And that's the thing about it, and it's look, you've got to work through it as a golfer. he's been fortunate. He's won his bunch of majors, and he's done a fantastic job of that.
What were your thoughts? I saw on social media about people were saying he needs a new putter grip because he has absolutely worn his putter grip out. What are your thoughts? Is that a superstition thing? Is that a feel thing?
I think there's an element of that. Yeah, very much so. It's a case of, what does he feel he's going to lose by changing that grip? I've seen it with players before. I've seen it, numerous times, and you get a player, just encourage them to switch. They'd rather switch the putter complete lock, stock and barrel and switch the, to switch the putter out, the grip out. Because once you take grip off, it ain't going back on. Not that type. I mean, I've said it enough times, but you're not getting that grip on anything like it was before, because of the way it's designed. And he'd rather put a new putter in the bag, I think, than to put a new piece of rubber on it. But it won't last forever. It will ultimately fall off. And do
you think behind the scenes, do you think he'll be testing different grips, looking at the feel and things like that before he puts anything?
He's going to stick with the same. He's going to stick with the same one because it works. Which is then when it comes down to how long will it last? It's like the old, the rubberized grips that we used to have, or the leather grips before that. Players would stick with it. But as a player, once a grip starts to lose performance, it starts to lose feel. It's not a grip that requires traction, or a club that requires lots of traction because you're swinging it at 120 mile an hour. It's not that, obviously. But there's a feel element to it. But pretty much every player I know that switches a grip out, when they eventually do it, goes, "Oh, I should have done this earlier." Because there's that feel of, it's all new. But if the one part of his game is super solid, then why would you change it? So but I think ultimately performance is locked in with the grip, and you get a good grip on your club, and you can you can grip it the way that you feel best. And like, as I said last week, I think he's knocking putts in, but his stroke isn't super smooth. It isn't as smooth as it used to be. So there are a few things going on there.
It's got a bit of jabby, isn't it? It's got a bit of jabby.
Yeah, there's a bit of jab going on there. The putter's not arcing, it's not rising in a pendulum manner. It's staying very low. It's artificially low in the backswing, and it's very, very low through the ball. It's almost like he's hitting down on it. And but he's rolling it nicely. And we can come down to the things of technique, and folk who've listened here before know that I have a principle around obtaining the optimum technique. The question is, number one, why wouldn't you? And the other one would be, if what you're doing already isn't broken, then don't try to fix it. And ultimately it comes down to the fact that if the speed's right and the face is square, 90% of the golf ball start line's been dealt with. So, as long as you haven't got a compromising path at that point, then the golf, ultimately the ball is going to do what you want it to do, and that is move towards the target at the right speed. So, it is very difficult from the outside looking in for knowing what is an ideal principle, and we have our ideals. And the ideals are based around human design. So in other words, everybody can do this, and then, everybody, folk talk about the fact that putting is very arty and feel. And, if you've got a flawed method, it is. That's my argument, all the time. If you have a flawed method, it is art, it is feel, and you better hope it's on all 4 days. Otherwise, your putting's going to be streaky. You'll be on, it'll be off. You don't know what's going on, and all of that is a big challenge. Yeah. So they're all, for me, they're all big, all deals that we can't. You can't. how successful do you want to be ultimately? You know, is the question. And you know, if you want to be consistent, if you want to be you know, competitive, you know, then you've got to have all of those things in place, I think.
Lots of people I've seen commenting before, and I think we've talked about it a little bit, but the forward press that he has, what are the benefits? What are the disadvantages?
Again, providing the putter sets up to, you know, to the point of impact that you're looking for, then, you know, there are no issues. You know, for me, you know, putting is all about what's happening at the point of impact. So if you've got around 1 degree aloft at the point of impact, then you know, ultimately you will deliver a putter that is, deliver the putter to the ball that ultimately gets that golf ball rolling. If you've got 4, 5, 6 degrees of forward shaft lean, and you've only got 3 degrees of loft on the club, then you're in a negative loft scenario and you're going to beat it down. And, you know, that becomes a poor stroke factor. It would suggest that he's got enough loft on his putter. And his forward shaft lean at address may represent, you know, sort of, you know, let's just say it's 5 degrees at the point of impact at address. It may only be 2 degrees at impact, in which case it's back to 1 degree if it's a standard lofty club at around 3 degrees. So again, it all comes down to the dynamics at the point of impact, you know, which is why it's so critically important to have some kind of technology that, you know, technology doesn't have to be electronic, you know, but have some kind of technology that tells you what's happening to the golf ball as you strike it. So it may be a roll board, you know, which, you know, as you've seen, you know, is basically a grained felt, you know, surface or base surface that shows up what the golf ball is doing when you strike it. So if you know, if it's optimum, then the ball has a nice skid, you know, before it moves into roll. If it starts to bounce because there's too much loft or not enough loft, you know, then that will show up as well. And,
is that something that players just don't realise, the kind of recreational golfers, about how much loft's on their putter? And it's like almost like kind of an area that they could put better by understanding the amount of loft that they've got on their putter.
Yeah, when it comes to it, you know, we've talked about this before in terms of fitting putters, but ultimately, you know, loft at the point of impact falls further down the list, you know, in terms of getting things right first. Now, if you've got a player who can deliver the club consistently based around the optimum length, so setup, lie, so that it hangs correctly. So now when you've got the right lie, you've got the right angle of lofted face at the point of impact, then, you know, all those characteristics at the point of impact then is, you know, comes down to now, how does the putter deliver the face of the club? And if the loft is too much or too little at that point, then it's going to affect the initial launch of the golf ball. But the first things first is you get the length of the club right to optimize posture so that you can perfect the stroke. And then once you've got that consistency, you know, really the lie angle of the club is you know, is coming through your posture. It's how your arms hang, you know, from the elbow. That determines the lie angle of the club, and then from there, the loft is a dynamic thing. It's a freedom of movement, and it's the consistency. There's no point in going straight for the jugular of loft when a player has a variable of 3 to 5 degrees. You know, you've got to get that down to within a degree. You know, which will, you know, all recreational golfers can do that. You know, can get anything locked into within a degree. And then you can then say, right, okay, from here I can safely say that, you know, if they're forward lean, and look, an awful lot of golfers chip the ball with the putter. So, you know, I would say that it's probably a 75-25 split on adding loft to de-loft. And then subsequently, you are, you've got to get that player to be as consistent as they can and then dial it in. You're trying to get around 1 degree. If a player is variable 1.5, 2 degrees, then, somewhere between 1 and 2 degrees is going to be ideal. What you don't want is negative. You never want negative loft on the putter, because that's just going to beat the ball in the ground. It's, so that's, you're always erring on the side of loft, rather than, but as close to 0 as possible if you're consistent. So I say around 0.5 to 1 degree is ideal, but you've got to be consistent at delivering it. There's no point in saying, right, okay, well, I'm going to set the putter for 0.5 degree of launch and, 0.5 degree of loft and 1 degree of upward launch, rise angle with the putter, because if a player can't do that, then it's futile.
What's the ratio between kind of skid and roll? What's the ideal? What's the optimum?
We want the ball. Skid has to happen. You can't. It's whether it be something that we need to understand is that you can't immediately roll the ball because there's an element of no friction. The point of no friction, in effect, what happens is that friction is the only thing that causes the golf ball to roll. Now, launch dynamics can help to optimize that. If the loft is more than the rise angle, then you'll chip the ball and you create backspin. But you've got to keep the ball on the ground to create friction. Friction's the only thing that's causing the golf ball to roll end over end. Mm-hmm. It's a complete fallacy if you think you're going to get topspin on the golf ball. You can't. The only way you get topspin on the golf ball is to actually physically strike the top portion of the golf ball. Well, you haven't got, that means 45 degrees of negative loft to do that, with an angle. Remember, the ball's sitting on the ground here as well. So you can't do that like a tennis racket shot, to create topspin or hit with the round tip of a cue, on the top portion of the ball. That's just not something that can happen in golf. So you strike the back edge of the ball with minimum loft. Say minimum as close to 0 as possible, but again, not negative. With again a very minimal rise angle. And the reason why you've got a rise angle is because you don't want to hit down. Because you hit down, you're going to beat the ball into the ground, it's going to chip bounce, So we want that golf ball. The faster the golf ball goes through the skid phase, the more optimized the roll is going to be. It's going to be around about 10% of the length of the putt. Mm-hmm. Now, in the perfect scenario, or say there is such a thing as a perfect scenario to create a lengthy skid. And, where the ball just does not do anything other than skid because the surface moisture isn't there, the surface friction isn't there, and the ball is literally just skidding across the surface. Doesn't happen very often. I've recorded it once. I actually hit the putt twice, but recorded it in the second instance, where the loft and the rise angle were optimized, and the surface contact, the friction on the surface was just like it was skidding on, a puck on ice. It just literally skidded across the surface. It was one of my playing partners that noticed that the ball hadn't rolled, but had continued to skid for 3 of the 4 foot that it had moved on. It was super quick, and I just struck the putt to knock it in, and it probably would have gone 3 foot, 4 foot past the hole, but it was, it was a nominally downhill putt, but just one of those, perfect storms, for creating that environment. And that's the only thing I could figure out, because it wasn't something that was going to be easily replicated. The following day, the sprinkler heads had been on. It was a course that I was playing in the middle of a club championship weekend. We played late in the evening. The club championship had happened in the morning, first round. We got to play in the afternoon. So a balmy summer's afternoon, just the perfect amount of heat, the perfect amount of dry surface, and it created a skid. And if I hadn't have recorded it on a couple of, mobile phones just lined up, we wouldn't have been able to see the fact that this golf ball just skidded along the way. I was fortunate I was able to replicate the putt that I just hit as well, because I could have been there all day and not replicated it. But yeah, typically around about 10% is skid. and then friction takes over to create the roll. So don't try to swing up on it to get topspin. It's just not something that you need to do. And if folk are out there teaching it, just recognize it. There's just not something that can happen. So don't try to swing up. But if a player is hitting down on it, and you're far better off having a putter coming up through the ball than you are down through the ball.
That's really interesting, because again, I don't think people realize this. I think people, like you said, will go into a big box store, pick up a putter, rolls, feels nice, that's it, move on, next. There's so many of these little myths that we hope that we just keep dispelling and just keep engaging and educating people on. It's so important.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many different things that ultimately you weather through the perfect storm and you create the right launch conditions. So you want the golf, but you want the face to be nice and square to the target. You want the path to be reasonably straight to the target. And that's where the flexibility of being human is. As long as the face is square, the path can be reasonably straight, and the golf ball's going to start where you want it to. The loft needs to be minimal, and the rise angle, minimal, to keep the golf ball on the ground. One of the biggest challenges of you've just don't hit whatever many shots to get down the fairway and get the ball on the green, and then you're trying to chip the ball off the green to get it rolling. Yeah, I mean, it's just like, why would you ever think? Sometimes we don't think about these things. It's amazing how many times I ask the question with folk and they go like, well, I'm trying to get topspin. Well, what do you think is going to happen to the golf ball if you swing up on it? Well, we get topspin. So do you get topspin on your driver when you swing up on it? Because you're only swinging up on the driver a couple of degrees. Nobody's really swinging 7 or 8 degrees up on the driver. You're going to top it, no matter how high it's teed. So, it's only a couple of degrees of upswing. You do that because it's positioned forward in the stance and you've teed it up to try and create that scenario as well. But do you get topspin? The numbers on the launch monitors tell us there's 2,500 spin if you're optimizing. Might be 3.5 depending on your speed, but there's always 2,500 to 3,500 spin on the driver, and you're swinging up on it and the ball gets in the air. It doesn't ever get topspin. It'll roll because friction has caused the bottom of the ball to move slower than the top of the ball. That's why it rolls down the fairway, but it gets in the air because of backspin. And that's what we don't want on a putt. Now speeds will eliminate how much backspin you can create, but you can create backspin. So you don't want backspin on it. That's going to stop the golf ball from rolling. The idea of putting is rolling the ball towards the hole. Also, last time I checked. But it's amazing how many folk think that they've got to try and put topspin on the ball when roll is all you can achieve, because you can't create more roll. And at what point does roll become topspin anyway? So what's the definition of topspin? Is the ball, the top half of the ball is rolling faster than the bottom half. It's based on friction. So you've got to keep the ball on the ground to create friction. And if you keep it on the ground, you do create friction. So, hey, perfect.
Exactly. And I think that's something, again, that Nate Ashley needed some talking about. Lashley kind of had a bit of a heads gone on the last 3 holes at the tournament this weekend. Do you want to elaborate, Andy?
Yeah, I think we had a little bit of a brain capitulation. It's
Do you think he looked at the leaderboard and went, "Oh my goodness, I've got a chance here. I'm playing well"?
What I would say is he obviously fancied the first putt, and he's hit it well. He's hit it 5 foot past the hole, so he's given himself a chance to miss the return. And he's not used to being in that position. But you don't get on the PGA Tour if you can't win. Somewhere along the line, you've won something. You know how to win. So ultimately, I think he's just literally stopped thinking in the moment. It's very difficult to get inside a player's head, and I've not seen any interviews. But he's hit the first putt. He's regretting the first putt. if that was me, I'd be regretting the first putt. I've given myself an opportunity to miss the next one. He hits another really good putt, but with too much speed, he doesn't take the break. Now, he doesn't want the golf ball to spin off, but now he's left himself 3 foot past the hole again, and of course, it's missable. So he hasn't done anything wrong in the first 2 putts, but it's a shocker of a third putt.
Mm.
And, that is a bad putt. It's a bad stroke. So, at all times, we have to be very mindful of, this capitulation can happen. And of course, then you go into press. You make eagle at the last, and you give yourself a half chance of a decent check. It's if he'd have won the tournament, I think I think I saw earlier it cost him somewhere between 110 and so $500,000. Will he get over it? I don't know.
Yeah. What were your thoughts? His reaction? He's kind of trying to sink his putter into the 16th green. Is that just, again, in the moment, head's gone, just instincts taken over, kind of rationale?
It is, but I'm going to throw one out there, which will leave the audience split, I'm sure. If you're burying a club in the green, is that worse or lesser an issue than what we had with Justin Thomas a few weeks ago?
Yeah. Mm.
No, I'm not. I'm not defending Justin Thomas for what he said in making this statement. But I'm sorry, the guy deserves to lose every single one of his sponsors for doing something like that. If you go and do it on the route to the next tee, that's one thing. Get your upset out the way.
Mm.
You smack the club in the ground, do whatever. You do it in a green. There's people to follow. They're going to have to putt over that damage, and they don't get a chance to get relief from that damage. Because it's not marked as ground under repair. You have deliberately, even if it's in the moment, you have deliberately. If you've fallen over your putter and walked on it and damaged the green, that's one thing. But you have deliberately buried your club. Well, for a start, I know if my dad had been caddying for me, he'd have left the club in the ground. He wouldn't have picked it up. So, he'd have walked off and left me to do whatever. So I haven't seen the reactions because obviously, the cameras kind of diverted fairly quickly. And there's no, next to no footage available of it. It'll soon pop up on YouTube, I'm sure. But, I just think it's despicable. I think any player who can do that level of damage deserves whatever's coming for him. And I think, the way that we'd rule it out, within the industry is remove the check that he's just received. Not the points, all right, but the money. All right, it's only going to cost a few dollars to fix it. Pebble might decide to put a little patch in there. If it's the size of a club head, it's the size of a hole. In with a hole, out with a hole cup, and plug and away you go, it's repaired. But let's take this. Let's get rid of this petulance. I mean, that's petulance to me. Let's get rid of that petulance from the professional game, right? And start finding the players. You physically damage the golf course to a point where one of the significant surfaces is damaged. I've seen it with DeChambeau as well. So I'll point somebody else out on the practice green. On the practice green, get a grip of yourself, or just stop players from playing for 3 months, and that will affect everything then. But deal with it. PGA Tour, stop protecting the players.
Yeah, there's a way you can deal with frustration, anger, and it's not taking it out on the golf course. You can go take yourself for a walk in the woods and have a mutter to yourself. But the thing about what these guys don't realise that there's cameras everywhere now.
Well, the kids think it's right. That's the thing. Kids think it's okay. All right. Oh, I can tell you now that as a junior golfer, it isn't okay. It isn't as a senior golfer, but as a junior golfer, the consequences of doing something like that is significant. You get 3 months suspension in the middle of the season. I've had to climb trees to get my clubs back before now. I don't mind admitting that. I'm not, I'm ashamed to have to admit that. But as a 15-year-old, kid with testosterone running around him like a lunatic, throwing a club, in the direction of the fairway that, an old fella that I played with said, if you're going to throw a club, throw it where you're walking. So I did. Unfortunately, it was a tree-lined alleyway of a tee shot, and I got stuck in a tree. Well, my playing partners walked off, laughing their heads off, and left me. I had to go and climb the tree myself. I didn't even get a leg up. I had to figure out how I was going to get up the tree, and caught up with them about 25 minutes later. Look, we joke about it now, but that's, again, the petulance of a 15-year-old. This guy isn't 15. Mm-hmm. And to damage a green on an iconic golf course or otherwise is, fine him. And I would go as far as to say, you fine him exactly the same amount of money as what his check's worth. Don't take his FedEx points away, but hurt him. Mm. And if he's lost 100 grand because he's just decided in the moment, he's going to get it sorted. Justin Thomas has been brilliant because he's turned around and said, I'm going to go on a course to better myself, to improve myself as a human. I think those were the words he actually used. And he's gone and got himself onto some kind of disciplinary course or anger management course, whatever it is, to try and understand a bit more about why he does it, because you ain't getting the fix without finding the cure. You've got to get the cure. You've got to fix, what's wrong first before you go for the cure. And he's learning how not to say what he said. He's accepted it, right? But it's cost him millions. It doesn't even cost him. It's cost him $1 million, a couple of $1 million contract along the way as well. And again, I'm completely with Ralph Lauren for doing that.
And you can see how these players' reactions, from the reputation Patrick Reed's got now to Justin Thomas, now to Nate Lashley. You think how quick kind of sponsors and people like that are to go, no, sorry, we're not taking that, we're leaving, we're going, we don't want to touch it. Do you think this will happen in a similar kind of situation?
To some degree, I hope so. Because I don't think we can condone it. There's too much. We're allowing this almost nanny state that we're living in is allowing no consequences for being, for petulance. I don't care. Well, you should. Make him care. Rob, a passion of mine, obviously, at this point, you realise that. But, it's make him care. We've got teenagers that don't care. Why? Because there's no consequence for their actions. Damage something, so what? So what? I mean, I remember playing football in my parents' backyard when I was a kid, and I broke I broke a plastic, to the roof on next door neighbour's garage. It was a skylight, but it was corrugated plastic, and it allowed light into his garage. Right, I had to pay for that, and rightly so. I remember my football sitting in his garage, so there's no way I was going to get away with it, But I went round and knocked on the door. I went into my dad first and said, "Look, Dad, I think I'm in a spot of bother because I think I've broken Uncle Jeff's." All our neighbours are uncles then, weren't they? I've broken Uncle Jeff's roof. All right, okay, come on then. And he was coming out as we were coming round. So I said to him, "I'm really sorry. I think I've broken the roof." And he says, "Yes, you have." So, and he was, I shit myself. I don't know, 11, 12, something like that. He was an old man, but I respected him. And he was a big fella, and there wasn't fear. I respected him. I expected him to go. He said, "Right, okay." He said, turned to my dad and he said, "How shall we deal with this?" And he said, "It's up to you, Jeff. It's your roof, but he gets pocket money. So, if he can let me know how much it is." And, he said, "And then we'll get him to pay for it." And fair play to him. He only charged me a £5. He ended up replacing 5 or 6 panels, which cost him 30 quid. If it was only a £5, it was going to cost him 30 quid and his time and effort and everything else. But because I could access it from my bedroom onto my roof, I helped him do it. The least I felt I could do, as a 60-year-old man climbing a roof to get on there and repair his roof. I've caused the problem. I'm going to help him. Accountability, number one, cost me in my pocket. Yeah, not a huge amount of money, but it was, it was certainly a few weeks, pocket money. I don't think I got £1 a week pocket money back at that point in time, but it was, it was over a month's worth of money, and I became accountable for it. I can tell you now that I didn't break anything else ever, and I'm telling you now that's something that happened 40 years ago.
Yeah,
not something that we've preempted. That's just accountability, and it's something. It's a life lesson, and if we put these life lessons, these players, millionaires, most of them. All right.
Mm-hmm.
Nate may not be yet, but he's playing on the PGA Tour. There's money coming into his account. Make him accountable, and then we deal with it, and then we clean up an already clean game, and we stop it from going down the route of becoming a street trash game. Because I think we just we can allow it, or we can deal with it, and it's up to the governing bodies. PGA Tour, deal with it.
Yeah, we had an interesting one this week as well, where for the third straight week running, we've had a winner that's had a bagless sponsor or a non-equipment branded. We had Kevin Na with Callaway. He broke he would have been 4, but Kevin Na's with Callaway. We had Patrick Reed, we had Brooks Koepka. Now we've got Daniel Berger, who haven't got an equipment sponsor, so to speak. This year they're independent. They're putting in their bag what they want. What are your thoughts of Berger's kit?
What's interesting is the fact that it's nearly 10 years old, some of it. I've caught a glimpse of it, and it looks like it's a 2011 model.
Yeah.
So the irons, that is. And they're really good irons, actually, to be fair.
I had a set. I remember those. I had a set of them.
Shape of irons that, that I would say that is extremely playable for a golfer. And I liked its adjustability factors with the, they could adjust the weights around. Actually, funnily, not too dissimilar to what Callaway's done this year. 10 years ago.
Yeah.
So I think when you're looking at when he comes down to it, and Daniel's been around a while, and he won in 16, 17 last year, and this year now 4 wins. So it's already starting to build to be an impressive career, and it's not a classic book. It's not an overly peculiar looking swing until you break it down. But he's using equipment that works. And I think there's a huge amount to be said for that. Just on a side note there, Koepka's switched to Srixon in the last couple of weeks and signed a deal to use the Srixon irons. He's not using the wedges, so he's only got the irons in the bag. And he's not using the ball, which is, ordinarily part of the deal. But, what kind of a deal he's got going on there, I don't know.
Exactly.
But there's some kind of deal, and I think players, at the end of the day, these are the tools that make the difference. That's where it comes down to. These are the tools that make the difference. So once we've gotten, our tools, then we've got to look at it and say, actually, we've got everything we need.
Does this hurt the manufacturers, though, Andy?
Does it hurt the manufacturers? Well, it's not hurting TaylorMade that Daniel Berger's using a set of golf clubs that are made by TaylorMade. So, does it hurt them that he's not using something current? We had a conversation off air, obviously beforehand, that he sourced as many of those heads that he could get. Because he knows they're not going to last forever. They're not going to reproduce them. So he's just sourced as many as he could find. So he obviously likes that. Now, it may come a point in time where he actually likes something that's new. But, TaylorMade's not paying him to use those. They would help him find as many heads as they can find, and if there are none in the vaults, then he's out of luck from them. But he's does it hurt? I don't think it does. I wouldn't say that it's necessarily win-win, because if somebody says, well, I'd like a set of clubs that Daniel Berger's with, they can't do that. But so it's not a win-win. But then TaylorMade's benefit is that they'll stop at that person who finds him endearing enough to want to use his equipment will just go and have another set of TaylorMade. At the end of the day. So I think the manufacturers will shy away from the 7-figure deals now more significantly because, you know, the current climate economically has hit those manufacturers. And who knows what else is going to happen. We know all the clubs are made in the Far East, you know, largely. We also know that there's 9-month lead times on some of these products. It isn't stopping some of the manufacturers from getting product out every 6 months, as TaylorMade ordinarily do. But you can't keep paying multi-millions out, you know, and think that the customer on the street who's, you know, not got maybe as much money as he did have, you know, is going to survive, you know, going to shell out, you know, 1,200 quid just for, you know, or $1,500 just for a set of irons because somebody's getting paid to use them. I think we're seeing past it. You know,
yeah. Well, especially when I've just looked and you can pick up a set of those on eBay for $300.
Yeah. You know, and that'll be it. You know, a lot of folk will think, oh, crikey, if it's good enough for Daniel, then I'll go and buy a set of those. And you know, last year, a couple of years, that's great. You know, I don't know where the bubble has to burst. You know, I think we've been saying that for years. I think it reins itself in rather than, you know, the bubble deflates rather than bursts. But I just don't understand where, you know, customers and, you know, are thinking it's okay. I think they're going to get a better game for spending another $500 or, you know, $600 extra on a set of golf clubs, you know, than they would have done 2 years ago. Because that's the crazy thing. Only 2 years ago, these were $800. They're now $1,200, $1,300, $1,400. And, you know, is the technology that much greater? No. So who's making the money? It's not all shipping. Some of it is. It's not all shipping. It doesn't work it out quite like that when you're ordering, you know, sort of 10,000 sets of the stuff. It doesn't pan out to be 100. If you're moving one set around, it might cost $100 more to move it around. But, you know, it's not, you know, $10,000 is not moving that. But we do know that, you know, shipping is, you know, you've got one of your clients is about 15 times the shipping costs.
Yeah, so it's ridiculous. Yeah.
You know, and, you know, bulky items that are bulky items, you're just not getting many into a container. So, you know, they are going to cost. But, yeah, I like the fact that, you know, golfers out there who are using equipment that is not assigned, you know, to, you know, or players not paid to use is, you know, I think it's refreshing.
Yeah, because I've seen as well that the guys who used to work for Nike have set up a wedge company called Artisan Wedges. And Jason Day and Patrick Reed have both got them in their golf bags, kind of ex-Nike staffer players. I don't know if it's the same kind of product or similar to what Nike produced. But again, it's great to see lesser, newer brands coming out and players putting it in the bag.
Yeah, I think, you know, and obviously it becomes you know, a bit of an advantage when the guys who were servicing these players, you know, 5 or 6 years ago were, you know, come out with something, you know, that's new as a brand, and they know the score. You know, at the end of the day, you know, you're giving this stuff away to get players using it, you know, to create brand awareness. So, you know, you're only giving away out the marketing pot. But they've also got the advantages that the player that they will use to work with knows who they are. You know, hey, how you doing? You know, it's good to see you. It's like, what are you up to? Oh, you know, and they're like kids in a candy shop. You know, I made a comment at the weekend, you know, that professional sportsmen are like kids anyway. They never really grow up, you know, partly because there was a prank in Dubai. I don't know if you saw it, went viral. But the prank in Dubai that Poulter and Stenson seem to be winding each other up at the moment, and Stenson seems to be winning. He's a bit of a sly old dog, he's asked Henrik. But yeah, you know, they just never grow up, and it's the same with the equipment. There are guys out there that know what they want, and you know, like to just stick with that.
Sandy, rumour has it that you've been building something, and it's quite exciting. It's quite artificial, and it takes some kind of intelligence, doesn't it? I don't know.
Artificial intelligence. I'll throw that in there. intelligence, I'm not sure which one of us in the collaboration of this this new testing equipment, Robo Putt. So yes, in collaboration with Ray McMahon from Carbon Mac, Ray and I we've spent about 9 months now in discussion over the Carbon Mac shaft. And so fortunately, as an engineer, he's able to get his hands on the equipment to be able to build a putting robot. So in effect, he's got a fantastic product. It's ridiculously good, but I need to know why. Yeah. We can't just say, "Oh, a putter feels good because a putter feels good." I need to know why. I need to know what it is that it's doing, and that's the beauty about it, is that we've designed. It's funny, when you get two visual individuals who can't get together, because of the current lockdown, but you get two visual individuals trying to communicate their visual ideas to each other. It's amazing what you can come up with. But we have a prototype working, and we have a putting stroke that works very, very effectively on the prototype. So we've got a little bit of refining to do. Ray's done a really good job of developing the prototype. I think we'll refine it, significantly for version 2. But over the next week or so, we will have the working model. Well, the prototype is a working model. It's doing exactly what we need it to do. And we will get together because, we cannot get any of this done. It's information that the golf industry needs. It may not want, but it certainly needs. And we're going to be testing 7 significant putter shafts in various head designs, and we're also testing head designs ultimately so that we can get the data out to folk that you can make an educated decision on what you feel is the right club for you. So that's basically what we've done, or in the process of doing, and we'll be testing. So kind of watch this space, really.
Love it. That's so exciting. So
we've not been dormant, sat down twiddling their thumbs watching the golf on TV. Although I'll be perfectly honest with you, I felt like doing an awful lot. But there's little snippets of things that will keep you excited, and this has been one of them. And it's been something that I've wanted to do. I've had concept in mind for a long time, and I've never found anybody who was engineeringly capable of being able to put the design into construction. And Ray's brilliant. This is the thing about sort of old hand engineer, and it is old hand engineering. He's done a fantastic job. I've seen the images, seen the video footage of it working, and he's refining the latter stages of it now, just to optimize so that we've got variables. And the beauty about it is we can vary how the stroke performs. That's one of the things that was absolutely critical. I was involved a few years ago with a good friend of mine in Melville with a Centre Cup putting trainer that in effect illustrated what the virtues of straight back and straight through stroke was, and how to optimize the rocking of the shoulders. Unfortunately, it didn't fit with my coaching ethos, but it wasn't a case of I just want him to set it back by 20 degrees or whatever. Because his coaching ethos was to rock the shoulders. And of course, you can see what's happening to my head when the shoulders rock rather than when they rotate. So we got the rotation factor built into the frame. And subsequently from there, we were able to, sort of prove certain points of reference with regards to the stroke and how the face would rotate and arc. And, we could measure things in a specific way. More concisely, doing it that way. But again, it was still a human doing the work, and I've wanted to get a robot to do it, so that I can divorce myself from the process, and then do the human testing on the back of it, so that you've always got to have a control model in everything that you do. You cannot have a human response do everything 100%. You just can't. As good as I know my putting stroke is, it still has variety. I hit plenty of putts, but I don't practice religiously my stroke because I don't need to. I'm not playing, I'm not competing, at the level that, some of my clients are. So you've got to be able to repeat the stroke, and that's what gives you clinical trials. So, so that's where we'll be. And it's a heck of a lot. What I've put together for the tests is going to be close to 3 days worth of testing, which is a heck of a lot of testing. I mean, we're talking ridiculous amount of testing, ridiculous amount of putts. Each putter, each shaft will be subject to a minimum number of putts, so that we can see what happens to it, so we can pick up the variables. And then we're testing head shapes as well as sort of shafts. So yeah, it's an exhaustive and extensive test, but you've got to do it properly, and then if anybody would like to help contribute towards that, because it doesn't come cheap. We're hiring in equipment. We will be using Sam Putt Lab, Capto and Quintic, for analysis, so that we cover all the bases. So if there are any comparable tests out there, then we'll have the numbers back up all of the comparable tests. So, we just basically have everything in our power, So, I'm looking forward to. I'm not looking forward to doing the tests and writing down the results of every putt. I mean, that's the difficult bit. The easy bit is doing what potentially could be 20 hours of testing. That'll be the easy bit.
Brilliant. Can't wait.
Yeah. So I never know, you might get drafted in.
Super.
So,
great
yes,
show.
So that's
mate.
where we are.
Great show again.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, obviously, we're going into a different phase, and obviously from our point of view here in the UK, we're, middle of February, we still don't know when we're going to be able to get out on the golf course. It's 13 degrees outside, the sun is shining, it's a beautiful day, we should be on the golf course. And we're not. And that's where it starts to get a little bit ridiculous, really. So, there's no reason why we can't be out there. Easy enough to social distance. We need to get back out on the golf courses. We need golfers to get back out playing golf, and we need the coaching centres and the practice centres to be up and running. PDQ, because there are a lot of folk out there struggling with their mental health because they're not getting out to see folk, they're not getting out in the sunshine, and it's really important for us all that we can get out there and do that. So I can't get out in the sunshine today because I've got clients from all over the globe coming online to see me, and of course we will be on live at 4 o'clock. So yeah, I've got a busy one, busy day. So
good stuff, Andy. Thanks for your time, pal.
Brilliant. Looking forward to spending more time with you going forward. We'll let you know how these tests are going to get on.